The story of China and Africa is not a new one. It began decades ago, rooted in a shared history of overcoming colonial rule and foreign domination. In the mid-20th century during the Cold War, China under Mao Zedong supported African liberation movements. This was a relationship built on political solidarity and a common identity as part of the developing world. China offered ideological support and modest aid, helping newly independent African nations find their footing on the global stage. This historical connection laid a foundation of trust and mutual respect, which has proven to be an invaluable asset for Beijing in the modern era. This early engagement was less about economics and more about building alliances against Western powers. Today, China's interest in Africa has evolved dramatically, shifting from political ideology to pragmatic economic and strategic goals. The continent is a treasure trove of natural resources, which are essential for fueling China's massive industrial economy. Africa holds vast reserves of oil, copper, cobalt, and lithium, the critical minerals needed for everything from smartphones to the batteries that power the green energy transition. Beyond resources, Africa represents a huge and growing market of over 1 billion people. Chinese companies see immense potential for selling their goods and services to this expanding consumer base. China is not just extracting resources, it is also building a new economic sphere of influence far from its own shores. This renewed engagement is formalized through high-level diplomatic efforts, most notably the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation or FOCA. Held regularly since 2000, these summits bring together Chinese and African leaders to set the agenda for their partnership. At the 2024 FOCA, President Xi Jinping declared a new era of an all-weather China-Africa community, promising billions in funding and job creation. China has also successfully integrated African nations into its broader global initiatives. The inclusion of Egypt and Ethiopia into the BRICS economic bloc and the widespread African support for the One China principle demonstrate Beijing's growing diplomatic clout across the continent. This strategic alignment is a clear signal of a changing world. The appeal of China's model for many African leaders lies in its policy of non-interference in domestic affairs. Unlike Western partners, who often tie aid and investment to conditions related to democracy, human rights, and governance, China offers development with no political strings attached. This approach is highly attractive to governments that wish to pursue their own development paths without external oversight. A 2024 survey of African youth revealed that 82% held a positive view of China, even higher than their approval of the United States. This perception is built on the tangible results they see around them: new roads, bridges, and hospitals, and a feeling that China treats them as equal partners in development rather than as dependents. At the heart of China's strategy in Africa is the Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI, a colossal global infrastructure project designed to create new trade routes connecting China to the rest of the world. For Africa, this has translated into an unprecedented construction boom. Chinese state-owned companies are building the essential infrastructure that many African nations have lacked for decades. In Cameroon, a Chinese firm is constructing a 200-kilometer motorway to link the cities of Yaoundé and Douala, easing commerce and travel. Similarly, in Malawi and Madagascar, Chinese construction groups are building new roads that connect rural communities to economic centers, promising to unlock new opportunities for trade and development across the region. This infrastructure development is closely linked to China's voracious appetite for Africa's mineral wealth. To secure the raw materials needed for its technological and green energy sectors, China is investing heavily in mining projects and the logistics to support them. In November 2023, a Chinese company purchased Botswana's Kemakau copper mine for a staggering $1.9 billion. Just a few months later, in January 2024, Chinese firms committed up to $7 billion for mining infrastructure in the Democratic Republic of Congo, a country rich in cobalt. This strategy ensures that China has a steady supply of critical resources while also providing the capital for African nations to develop their mining sectors. The infrastructure projects are not limited to roads and mines, they extend to railways and technology as well. In Namibia, a Chinese corporation is upgrading a key railway line that connects the interior to the coast, enhancing the efficiency of the Walvis Bay port. This creates a seamless network for transporting goods and resources from deep within the continent to global markets. China is also helping to build Africa's technological capacity. A landmark agreement was signed with a Chinese firm to construct Zambia's first cholera vaccine plant. In Botswana, the nation's first locally assembled electric vehicles were unveiled in collaboration with Chinese companies, signaling a new era of industrial partnership. While these projects bring undeniable benefits, they also come with significant risks for African countries. The financing for many of these large-scale ventures comes in the form of loans from Chinese banks. This has led to concerns about rising debt levels, with critics warning that some nations could fall into a so-called debt trap where they are forced to offer concessions or cede control of strategic assets if they cannot repay their loans. Furthermore, the deals are often opaque, and the projects frequently rely on Chinese labor rather than creating jobs for local populations. African nations are therefore tasked with the difficult challenge of maximizing the benefits of Chinese investment while carefully managing the associated financial and social risks. China's influence in Africa extends beyond economic and infrastructure projects into the strategic realm of military and maritime power. The most significant development in this area is the establishment of China's first ever overseas military base in Djibouti, located on the Horn of Africa. Opened in 2017, this base sits at a critical choke point for global shipping near the Suez Canal and the Red Sea. Officially, Beijing describes the base as a logistics facility to support its anti-piracy, peacekeeping and humanitarian missions in the region. However, its strategic location provides the People's Liberation Army Navy with a permanent foothold to project power far beyond its own shores, challenging the long-standing military dominance of the United States in the region. The ambitions do not stop at Djibouti. The United States has raised alarms over China's reported plans to establish a military presence at the port of Bata in Equatorial Guinea. A permanent naval base on the Atlantic coast would be a game-changer, giving China a strategic position from which it could monitor United States naval movements and threaten American interests in a new theater. This potential development has sent ripples through Washington, which now sees China's activities in Africa not just as economic competition, but as a direct strategic challenge. The prospect of Chinese warships operating in the Atlantic Ocean represents a significant escalation in the geopolitical rivalry between the two global powers. Beyond these overt military installations, China has systematically invested in building and upgrading commercial ports all across Africa's coastline. These dual-use facilities can serve both commercial and potential military purposes, creating a network of friendly harbors for its navy. Chinese companies have constructed deep-water ports in Owendo, Gabon, and Luanda, Angola, on the Atlantic coast. On the Indian Ocean side, they have modernized the port of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania and are heavily involved in the expansion of Walvis Bay in Namibia. Each of these ports strengthens China's logistical capabilities, allowing it to move goods, resources, and potentially military assets more freely across the continent and beyond. This network of ports, combined with its military base, signals a fundamental shift in China's global posture. It is moving from being a continental land power to becoming a true maritime power with global reach. This expansion is a core component of its strategy to protect its sea lanes, secure its trade routes, and challenge the United States-led international order. For African nations, hosting these facilities brings economic benefits and infrastructure upgrades. However, it also places them in the middle of a growing geopolitical contest. They risk becoming pawns in a great power competition, where a decision to align with one side could invite punitive measures from the other, complicating their diplomatic and economic future. China's deepening engagement is reshaping global politics, directly challenging the influence that the United States and European powers have long held in Africa. For decades, the West was the dominant partner for the continent, but China's forward-looking, investment-heavy strategy has presented a powerful alternative. While the United States often focuses on security, counter-terrorism, and promoting democracy, China offers tangible, large-scale development projects that visibly transform economies. This has forced the United States to recalibrate its approach. The recent United States support for the Lobito Railway project in Angola is seen as a direct countermove to China's Belt and Road, signaling that a new era of competition for influence is well underway. For African countries, This rivalry presents both immense opportunities and significant dangers. The primary benefit is increased agency. They are no longer limited to a single set of partners and can now leverage the competition between China and the West to secure better deals for themselves. African leaders have become adept at playing one side against the other to maximize investment and minimize unfavorable conditions. However, the risk of being caught in the crossfire is very real. As the United States-China rivalry intensifies, African nations may face pressure to choose sides, and aligning too closely with one power could lead to diplomatic or economic penalties from the other, potentially destabilizing the continent. African leaders and their citizens are not passive recipients in this dynamic. They are actively shaping their own futures. While many welcome Chinese investment, there is a growing desire for African solutions to African problems. Some countries are beginning to push back against over-reliance on Beijing. For example, Uganda terminated a railway contract with a Chinese firm over financing disagreements and awarded it to a Turkish company instead. The Democratic Republic of Congo is actively courting investors from the United Arab Emirates for its mining sector to diversify its partnerships. These actions show a sophisticated understanding of geopolitics and a determination to maintain national sovereignty while pursuing economic growth. Looking ahead, the future of China-Africa relations will be defined by this evolving balance of power. As China's economic and military presence grows, its relationship with the continent will likely become more complex. The initial phase of state-led infrastructure building may give way to more private sector investment and deeper societal ties. African nations will continue to navigate the fine line between partnership and dependency, seeking to harness China's rise for their own development agendas without compromising their independence. The continent stands at a historic crossroads, no longer a peripheral player, but a central arena where the contours of the 21st century global order are being drawn, one port, one railway, and one deal at a time.